It always began with a sound. Not a shout, not a bell, but the slow, deliberate echo of footsteps making their way down a polished 1960s school corridor. You could hear them long before you saw anyone. Heavy, steady, and utterly unmistakable. In an instant, chatter stopped. Pencils froze mid-sentence. Even the air seemed to tighten, as if the whole room instinctively knew it was time to behave. Back then, a teacher's approach carried a power that didn't need announcing. It traveled through floors, doors, and children's stomachs alike, because everyone understood what those footsteps could mean. A warning, a summons, or something far worse. Today, it's almost unimaginable that a simple sound could hold so much fear. Yet for an entire generation, those moments shaped the way we learned, behaved, and survived school. And behind those wooden doors waited secrets few ever dared to question. To understand those moments, you have to step back into Britain of the 1960s, when schools were built on order, authority, and an unshakable belief that discipline shaped character. Children arrived each morning in stiff uniforms that seemed designed to keep them upright, collars scratchy, shoes polished to perfection. The hierarchy was unmistakable. Teachers stood at the top, unquestioned and unchallengeable, while pupils were expected to follow instructions without hesitation. Silence wasn't just encouraged, it was admired. A quiet classroom was seen as a successful one. Corporal punishment wasn't a threat so much as a routine part of school life. Parents didn't just accept it, many openly supported it, convinced that a firm hand prepared children for the real world. This mindset came from a nation still carrying the weight of post-war rebuilding, where toughness, obedience, and respect for authority were considered essential virtues. In this atmosphere, punishment wasn't the exception. It was woven into the fabric of education itself, shaping classrooms where fear and order walked hand in hand, and where the line between discipline and intimidation often blurred. Among the punishments of the 1960s, 3 stand out as the backbone of school discipline: the cane, the slipper, and the ruler. The cane was the most feared, but it wasn't reserved for serious offenses. No, the cane was a versatile tool of control, used for the smallest infractions. Late for class, a tap with the cane, messy handwriting. Another strike, forget your homework. You guessed it, even the crime of using the wrong door to enter the classroom could land a student in trouble. Boys would line up outside the deputy head's office, nervously clutching their blazers, waiting for their turn at 6 of the best. There was an eerie silence as each boy heard the thwack of the cane meeting flesh and the sting that followed. This was the reality for countless students, where punishment was meted out with little hesitation, often in front of the whole class. The ritual of corporal punishment became so ingrained in school life that it was just part of the day. And then there was the slipper, a softer yet equally dreaded instrument. A swift smack to the backside, often in front of classmates. It was a punishment that was just as humiliating as it was painful. The ruler, too, was used for smaller offenses. A quick rap to the hands. Fast forward to today, and these practices seem unimaginable. Safeguarding laws have made corporal punishment not just rare, but illegal. The shock of these old punishments is all the more stark when you realize how deeply embedded they once were in our school system, and how they were supported by the wider culture, from parents to teachers. Here's something most people have forgotten. These punishments were once an everyday part of school life. Beyond the cane and the slipper, there were other punishments, quieter, stranger, and rarely discussed outside the school gates. One of the most common was simply being told to stand in the corner. It sounds harmless now, almost childish, but back then it carried real weight. A child would stand perfectly still, facing the wall, feeling the whole class watching. Minutes felt like hours. Silence felt like judgment. And no one dared move. Then there was the ordeal of holding books at arm's length. Heavy textbooks, stretched arms, and the slow burn of muscles giving way. Teachers would watch with folded arms, while children fought to keep the books from trembling. No one knew why this particular punishment existed, and yet no one questioned it. Writing lines was another quiet torment. I must not speak in class. I will not run in the corridor. Over and over, until hands cramped and ink smudged across the page. Staying behind after school in an empty classroom added an extra layer of discomfort. The fading light, the ticking clock, the sound of distant laughter from children already on their way home, all of it combined to make those minutes feel incredibly long. Odd traditions filled schools too. The infamous teacher's glare that could silence a child faster than any shout. The ritual of classroom inspections, where desks were checked for tidiness, as if preparing for military review. And, of course, the automatic punishment for using the staff entrance, a rule no one explained, yet everyone obeyed. Ask anyone who lived through it, and they'll recall a moment that still lingers. The burning arms, the endless lines, the quiet humiliation, strange rules, unspoken reasons, but in the 1960s, this was simply school. Looking back, the question remains, did this strict system of discipline work, or did it go too far? For some, it was a necessary part of growing up, the tough love that shaped their resilience, their ability to obey authority, and their respect for rules. It never did us harm, they say, recalling the schoolyard with nostalgia, where fear was just a part of life. For these people, the discipline they faced built character. It was a rite of passage, a lesson in survival. But for others, the effects were more damaging. The fear didn't stop when the school bell rang. It seeped into their adult lives, creating an anxiety that lasted far beyond the classroom. They remember the cold sweat of waiting for punishment, the constant feeling of walking on eggshells, and the long-lasting effects of humiliation. In hindsight, what some saw as discipline, others saw as control, and control that went too far. There were, of course, teachers who believed in compassion. They focused on understanding and nurturing, building students up rather than tearing them down. But these were the exceptions. Many others ruled with an iron fist, their authority enforced by the very punishments we now look back on with disbelief. So, was it discipline, or was it just a way to control? Perhaps a bit of both. But what we do know is that it left a mark on a generation. Some scars healed, others remain to this day. As we look back, it's hard not to see how those punishments shaped us, not just in the ways we behaved, but in the ways we thought about the world. Discipline taught resilience, obedience, and toughness. We learned to follow rules, even when we didn't understand them. We became experts in navigating the silent tension of the classroom, where every action seemed to have a consequence. But beneath that, there were invisible scars, moments when the fear of punishment left a mark on our hearts, not just our bodies. We remember the smell of chalk dust floating through the air, the sound of the cane cupboard door creaking open, the heavy weight of anticipation before a parent-teacher evening. These were not just parts of school. They were markers of our childhoods, of a Britain where children were seen but rarely heard, where punishment was the language of authority. Some memories sting, yet they also remind us of a time that shaped an entire generation. It was a Britain that no longer exists, one where rules defined us more than conversations ever could. And perhaps, in some ways, it was simpler then. But that simplicity came at a price. Today's classrooms would be unrecognizable to anyone who grew up in the era of canes and slippers. Safeguarding rules protect every child, emotional well-being is taken seriously, and student voices are encouraged rather than silenced. Punishment has shifted from fear to conversation, with restorative approaches replacing harsh consequences. And yet, the past still lingers in us, in the stories we tell, the discipline we value, and the memories we carry. Whether you loved your teachers or feared them, those classrooms shaped who we became. In their own complicated way, they helped build the Britain we know today.